Hi, I'm Abby, I have a lot of records, and I haven't worn this much hairspray or eyeliner since I was 13. So welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time here. I'm Abby, and this is my series Vinyl Monday. The who, what, when, where, why, and how do I feel about classic albums in my collection. If deep dives aren't your thing, don't worry. I also do Vinyl Monday in 60 seconds here on my channel, over on my Instagram, as well as TikTok. This is a very special week because for the first time ever, I am covering music from before the Beatles came to the States. We're stepping into a different world. JFK is president and Elvis Presley is king. Brenda Lee, Johnny Mathis, Bobby Vinton, Connie Francis, Pat Boone, Dion and the Drifters are all slinging hit singles. Surfing Cars and Girls is at the height of its popularity. Dick Dale and his Deltones, The Ventures, and a striped shirt wearing Beach Boys. And of course, there's the girl groups. We're not quite at the Supremes yet, but we've got the Crystals, the Shirelles, the Angels, the Chiffons, Martha and the Vandellas, Darlene Love and the Blossoms, and presenting the fabulous Ronettes. Congrats if you guessed this one. If you want to play along, all you gotta do is check out my community tab. That's where I post my hints to what the next album is gonna be. I host polls, I make announcements. You can find all of that on my channel. And if you so choose, you can always read the written version of my reviews on my website, linked in the description. All right, let's take the plastic off. So my copy is a repress by Sundazed Records from 2012. Sundazed is doing the Lord's work. I mean, come on. I bought my copy of Fabulous Ronettes off Discogs. I paid an embarrassing amount of money for it. For reasons we will get into later on, any pressing of Fabulous Ronettes is gonna run you a decent chunk of change. According to this photo book assembled by Michael Oakes, the Fabulous Ronettes cover design is by Three Lions Studio, and that is literally all I could find. Because at this point in the 1960s, album art as we think of it just didn't exist. Except for Barry Is on Top, album covers followed the strict formula of photograph of artist, title, track listing. Your back cover was track listing again in order of appearance, and liner notes either written by a producer or an engineer. Even Bob Dylan's early covers followed this formula. On the cover, we have Ronnie front and center in a brown paisley dress, flanked by the other Ronettes in blue silk and gold heels. Jerry Hershey, author of We Gotta Get Out of This Place, had more words to say about the Fabulous Ronettes cover than anybody else. Quote, "Upon my suburban altar, propped up on the dresser against a jelly jar full of pale lipsticks and dark mascaras, Ronnie was the coal-eyed goddess of female cool. The cover was downright spooky. No matter where you were in the room, Ronnie's eyes seemed to be following, looking right at you. Struggling with snappish garters, pantyhose were still a future comfort. I'd look up at Ronnie and pray for an end to girlish fumblings." On presenting the Fabulous Ronettes, we have the Fabulous Ronettes. Estelle Bennett, Nedra Talley, and featured singer Veronica, soon to be known as Ronnie Spector. They are backed by the Wrecking Crew. This was a very loose group of musicians who played for such artists as the Beach Boys, the Mamas and the Papas, the Monkees, Sonny and Cher, Frank and Nancy Sinatra, Ike and Tina Turner, and Glenn Campbell. They also played a handful of iconic TV themes. This group includes Tommy Tedesco, Barney Kessel, Bill Pittman, Larry Knechtel, Jimmy Bond, Ray Pullman, Carol Kaye, Don Randy, Al DeLore, and Hal Blaine. Carol Kaye is credited for guitar. This got me wondering if this guitar credit lumped all of the guitarists and bassists together, but you have Larry, Jimmy, and Ray credited for bass. Interesting. Special guests include the Blossoms singing backup, Leon Russell on piano, Sonny Bono playing percussion, probably tambourine, and 16-year-old Cheryl Sarkeesian. The world will soon come to know her as Cher, bitch!
I'm Cher, bitch!
Presenting the Fabulous Ronettes was engineered by Larry Levine, arranged by Jack Nitzsche, and produced by Phil Spector. Yeah, seeing as he produced the record, co-wrote the songs, owned the record label, and married the front woman, we're not going to be able to work around him this week. Roll transition. The Ronettes were always going to be involved in music somehow. Sisters Estelle and Ronnie Bennett and cousin Nedra Talley all grew up in a very large, tight-knit family in Spanish Harlem. It was a refuge. Spanish Harlem was the only place Ronnie and Estelle's parents could find an apartment. Their mother was black and Cherokee, while their father was white. It was one of the only neighborhoods accepting to mixed-race families. Even then, the girls never felt like they truly belonged anywhere outside the family unit. Ronnie said, quote, "The black kids never accepted me as one of them. The white kids knew I wasn't white, and the Spanish kids didn't talk to me because I didn't speak Spanish. I had a bit of an identity crisis when I hit puberty. I remember sitting in front of the mirror, trying to decide what I was." Aunts, uncles, and cousins all gathered at Grandma's place in Sugar Hill. All were musically inclined, including the future Ronettes. They learned to harmonize from listening to the grown-ups. Estelle and Nedra danced while Ronnie sang. She was the ringleader. She always had to be the center of attention. Ronnie and Estelle's mother, Bibi, talked up her beautiful and talented daughters to anyone who would listen. And it paid off. She worked at the donut shop across from the Apollo Theater. One day, the owner's family stopped in. Bibi got the girls and their cousin Ira a spot on Apollo's amateur night. Their song of choice was Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers' Why Do Fools Fall in Love. Ira was the boy, so he was supposed to sing lead. But when they got up there, Ira got stage fright and forgot all the words. Ronnie took over, and this was the informal beginning of the Ronettes. Quote, "They applauded me, and that's when I first said, yes, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, because if the black people could like me at the Apollo, I knew I had something." They were first called the Darling Sisters, then Ronnie and the Relatives. They performed at country clubs, mitzvahs, sock hops, and in Murray the K's shows at the Brooklyn Fox Theater. The girls also honed their look, as seen on the Fabulous Ronettes cover. Soft-spoken, sophisticated Estelle had a passion for fashion. She worked the makeup counter at Macy's, did a little modeling as well. Her style icon was Brigitte Bardot. Ronnie said their style was adapted from the girls in their neighborhood. The Puerto Rican girls wore the dark eyeliner, while the black girls wore tight dresses with slits in the skirts so they could dance. Nedra's mom was a beautician. She taught the girls how to do their big bouffants, which, yes, were their real hair. There is not enough Aquanet in the world to make my hair do what the Ronettes' hair could. This played right into the girls' hands. The 60s was the decade of hair. The look was genius. For one, the girls were petite. If you sat way in the back of the theater, you might not have seen them otherwise. And it was their gimmick. It set them apart from other girl groups of the time, still wearing white gloves and poofy dresses with crinolines. The 60s was also the decade of dance crazes. The pony, the monkey, the mashed potato, the hitchhike. None were bigger than the twist. Because of the twist, and Greg Garrison's Hey Let's Twist that the Ronettes were supposed to be in, the Peppermint Lounge was put on the map. And that's where the Ronettes wanted to be. Bibi sounds like something of a stage mom. She told the girls to stuff their bras and hold a cigarette so they'd look old enough to get into the peppermint. And it worked! The bouncer saw 3 girls dressed alike with big hair and makeup and just let them in. Furthermore, he assumed they were the entertainment, sticking them on stage with house band Joey D and the Starlighters. They dusted off one of their dance routines, Ronnie commandeered the mic to sing What I Say, and they got a regular gig at the hottest club in New York. In 1961, the Ronettes signed their first contract with Colpix Records. Since Nedra was 15, her mom had to sign the contract for her. They cut 2 singles, both flopped. Cue 2 more name changes, first to the Ronettes. Ron for Ronnie, N for Nedra, and S for Estelle. But so many MCs mispronounced this, they became the Ronettes. Colpix clearly wasn't working out. Enter Phil Spector. While we know him today as a convicted murderer, abusive madman, and general toupee-wearing weirdo, in 1962, Phil Spector was God. He worked under Lieber and Stoller before establishing Phillies Records with Les Still at age 21. Despite him having some quirks, he hired a bodyguard. He gained a lot of respect for his innovative approach to production, the maximalist, dramatic, reverb-soaked wall of sound. His early fascinations with rock and roll and gospel got him hip to girl groups. He recorded the Crystals' He's a Rebel, and He Hit Me and It Felt Like a Kiss. The latter was pretty controversial even in 1962 for glorifying domestic abuse. Phil saw no problem with that, and even then he had a reputation for causing chaos in the studio. After a session in which he pulled a gun on the engineers, Darlene Love refused to ever work with him again. The warning signs were always there. Phil just had the clout to hide them. For the Fabulous Ronettes material, Phil primarily worked with husband and wife duo Ellie Greenwich and Jeff Barry. Of similar stature to Jerry Goffin and Carole King, Greenwich and Barry wrote a lot of the songs we hear on this record. I Wonder, Baby I Love You, Chapel of Love, and of course, Be My Baby. As the story goes, Estelle called up Phillies Records and spoke to Phil herself. According to Nedra, Phil in fact attended a Ronettes gig at the Brooklyn Fox and met the girls backstage. He, despite being 23 years old and married, set his sights on 18-year-old Ronnie. He became obsessed with her, so obsessed with the Ronettes that he let the Blossoms and Crystals fall to the wayside. Ellie Greenwich said, quote, "He fell in love with her and thought he could really make her into this monumental star, and I think a lot of his other acts did suffer. All of a sudden, everything was geared for Ronnie and the Ronettes. He'd stop at nothing to sign them, even if they already had a contract. But he knew that if he, Phil Spector, one of the hottest producers in music, offered to buy the Ronettes out of their contract, Colpix would never let them go. So BB drummed up a story about the girls quitting music. Ronnie wanted to go to nursing school, and Estelle and Nedra wanted to be secretaries. Somehow, Colpix bought it! In March of 1963, the Ronettes signed with Phillies Records. Nedra was now 17 and still too young to sign herself. Phil took up an unofficial residence at Gold Star Studios in California, where the Ronettes' first LP was to be recorded. He briefly considered recording in Britain, but Gold Star had an echo chamber. This would become crucial to the wall of sound, along with the manpower. Phil would throw anything on a record. As many people playing as many things and as many voices as possible. This included Cher. On the day they recorded Be My Baby, Cher just happened to be hanging around the studio with her boyfriend Sonny. Darlene and one of the other girls didn't show up, probably because they were terrified of Phil, so he had Cher fill in. It was the very first record she ever sang on. Recording this thing was a haul. Phil's perfectionism meant it took 42 takes to record Be My Baby alone, and rehearsals lasted for weeks. All the while, Phil honed in on Ronnie. The girls would rehearse at Myra Sound in New York, then Phil would fly Ronnie out to Gold Star for private rehearsals, or to sing the lead parts for the record. The track listing of Presenting the Fabulous Ronettes goes as follows. Come on, baby. Opening up side 1, we have Walking in the Rain, followed by Do I Love You, then So Young. Next, the best part of breaking up, with the subtitle is When You're Making Up. Then I Wonder, and side 1 closes with What I Say. Opening up side 2, we have Be My Baby, followed by You Baby. Then Baby I Love You. Next, How Does It Feel? When I Saw You, and the album closes with Chapel of Love. Presenting the Fabulous Ronettes was released November of 1964. I can't find any officially listed date, but from the Billboard issues I've seen, I'd place it somewhere between the 15th and the 20th. Be My Baby was released first, all the way back on August 31st, 1963. Over a year before the album. It was the exact opposite of the Colpix singles. It leapt from number 55 to number 20 in a week, and after Dick Clark plugged it on American Bandstand, it was up, up, and away. It was the Ronettes' greatest hit, peaking at number 2 on the Billboard singles chart the week of October 12th, sandwiched between Blue Velvet and Sugar Shack. The top 10 was also occupied by Ray Charles, Martha and the Vandellas, and the Angels with My Boyfriend's Back. What a week! Other singles off the future Ronettes LP were Baby I Love You, Do I Love You, Walking in the Rain, and Best Part of Breaking Up. By all accounts, Be My Baby changed everything. It was the summer of the girl group. People couldn't get enough of the Ronettes. They went crazy. There were fistfights at the Apollo Theater between the guys vying for the girls' affection. They were especially zealous in Europe. At a gig for GIs in Germany, they got so rowdy, the girls had to escape in an armored truck. In January of 1964, the Ronettes headed to England for the first time. They met the Beatles, and the Rolling Stones opened for the Ronettes. That's how famous they were. Estelle dated George Harrison, Mick and Keith fought over Ronnie, she had a brief fling with John Lennon while Phil wasn't around. Of course, he found out and punished the girls by changing their flight home. What was that flight? You know, this one. It would have been amazing press for the girls to have been on those steps with the Fab Four as they arrived in America for the very first time. So begins Phil Spector sabotaging his own #1 group over his obsession with Ronnie. When the Beatles arrived in New York, it was chaos. They couldn't go anywhere without being mobbed, except for Spanish Harlem. Also in '64, the Ronettes met Jimi Hendrix. Jimmy was just a guitarist on the New York club circuit at the time. It would be years until Linda Keith discovered him and Chaz Chandler brought him to London. Jimmy and the Ronettes did stay friendly. You can hear Ronnie and Estelle on Earth Blues. Sadly, Fabulous Ronettes is their only LP. The early '60s just wasn't an LP-based market. You didn't release singles to promote a record. You released singles and then maybe made a record out of them down the line. This is also the Ronettes' only LP because they broke up in 1966. Who's responsible? Phil Spector. As his grip on Ronnie tightened, he stopped letting her travel with the other girls. She didn't go on their tour with the Beatles. Once she married Phil in '68, he effectively ended her career. My friend Emma and I host the Dolls Pod together. We have a whole episode about Ronnie's life, her career, and her relationship with Phil. She escaped him. Literally, she climbed out of a window and ran into the street barefoot because Phil took away all of her shoes. She continued to struggle, but she got her career back on track in the '80s. Ronnie tried to release her own recording of So Young in the '70s when she was still with Phil, but it got stuck in legal hell for reasons I still can't 100% make sense of. Ronnie later remarried, had 2 sons. She passed away 3 years ago. Estelle also had a really rough go at it, though we don't talk about her story as much as Ronnie's. Estelle also dealt with domestic abuse. She struggled with an eating disorder and with her mental health for the rest of her life. She passed away at 67 of cancer. Her daughter Toyin is working so hard to preserve her legacy in spite of the tough relationship they had. As of me recording this video, Nedra is still alive today. She retired from the music industry to devote her life to Christianity. The Ronettes have a far-reaching and immediate influence, starting with the Beach Boys. There is literally an entire section on Be My Baby's Wikipedia page devoted to its effect on Brian Wilson. He heard it, became obsessed, and played it nonstop. He went on to emulate Spector's wall of sound on all of the Beach Boys' greatest records, starting with their own response to Be My Baby. Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band are also influenced by the Ronettes. Ronnie covered Billy Joel's Say Goodbye to Hollywood with the E Street Band. She had a little fling with Little Steve after she left Phil. These girls' influence goes all the way down the line to punk. I'll keep this short, because this is a story for another episode. Phil Spector produced this record for the Ramones. It's called End of the Century. It's so bad it's good. On that record is a cover of Baby I Love You, because Phil held them at gunpoint until they recorded it. Ronnie heard the Ramones' Baby I Love You and loved it. She covered She Talks to Rainbows on an EP which Joey produced. I love Joey Ramone. We can't count out the late 50s, early 60s revival in the 80s for pushing the Ronettes influence. We see this crop up in fashion, films, and music. Billy Joel's Uptown Girl, clearly inspired by 60s pop music. He wrote the foreword of Ronnie's memoir. Eddie Money prominently featured Ronnie on his greatest hit, Take Me Home Tonight. And we can't forget Dirty Dancing. Released in 1987, set in the summer of 1963, it opens with Be My Baby. I may not have been alive to remember that early 60s revival, but I do remember the one in the late 2000s. There was this blue-eyed soul boom, triggered by Amy Winehouse. Amy modeled her singing and her look after Ronnie. They met only one time. Amy was so starstruck, she burst into tears. When she passed, Ronnie recorded Back to Black in her honor. We only said goodbye with words. I died 100 times. The Ronettes were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2007, where they performed Be My Baby together one last time at the ceremony. Fabulous Ronettes is on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Albums of All Time list, and Be My Baby is number 22 on their Greatest Songs of All Time list, between David Bowie's Heroes and Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit. So, what do I think of Fabulous Ronettes? Like many girls who were teens on or after the year 1987, I discovered the Ronettes through Dirty Dancing. I went to the 30th anniversary showing with my mom and my aunt and fell in love with Be My Baby. Not unlike Jerry Hershey, I would struggle with my skinny jeans in the morning. Oh god. Heavy eyeliner and skinny jeans. I am aging myself. I'd look at Ronnie's hair and makeup on my phone screen and wish I could look like that. But surely you can't dress in clothes from the 60s, right? This week presents a unique conundrum. Pop albums just weren't what they are now in the early 60s. Unless it was a jazz record, pop albums were just singles thrown together with some unreleased tracks. Engineer Larry Levine says as much in the liner notes. No care for sequencing, no greater arc, no greater story to tell besides the little ones in the songs. My biggest critique is just that. It's not so much an album experience as it is a collection of love songs. Love song after love song after love song. Teenagers love love songs. The first line says it all. I want him. I need him. Cynics, or otherwise people with fully cooked frontal lobes, may tire of this, but I urge you to allow yourself to fall in love with the Ronettes and their view of young love. It's quite touching. In the first 30 seconds of Walking in the Rain, we get the thesis statement of the record. The reverb-heavy sound thanks to recording in a literal, actual echo chamber. As far as production and arrangement goes, Spector's style was something akin to throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what stuck. Nitzsche accounted for a full band, an orchestra, percussion, bells, harpsichord, and backup singers, and distinctly Spector drums. Overdubs on overdubs make it sound murky as hell. But Ronnie's distinct, powerful voice always cut through. What made Ronnie so special was her brassy tone and wide vibrato. Not every singer has this natural vibrato. Even fewer can exaggerate it to this degree and still hold the note. That uncut quality powers through all of the stuff that's going on. The narrator of Walking in the Rain pines for a unicorn in this day and age. A true romantic. A guy who appreciates the simple things and only has eyes for his girl. He'll walk in the rain if he has to, but he won't push for anything more than a kiss. Maybe this is just the shock from me going to innuendo-laden Led Zeppelin to this, but this phase of pop music was chaste compared to double entendres of blues-based rock. Then I have to remember songs like What I Say existed, and it wasn't really more chaste, it was just better hidden. Repressed. even. That's part of why the mid to late 60s popped off the way they did. We also hear the first appearance of Ronnie's signature. She said so herself that she ripped this from Frankie Lyman. Next is Do I Love You, one of the great underrated 60s love songs. What makes a great love song? Say it with me, folks! Uncertainty. The narrator asks herself, do I love you? Yes, I love you, as opposed to the declaration of baby, I love you. Love was a high-stakes game. Do I live my life for you? There's a fantastic echo on the vocals. This isn't the echo chamber, though. It's the mics. It captures the room tone. Amy's producers did this for her for Back to Black. They recorded her with Neumann mics. It's like the girls are in the room with you. Their voices bounce off the walls. It's a three-way call and response between Ronnie, the girls, and the echo. I feel like I'm gonna overuse this term in this review, but the arrangement picks you up and carries you away. Though everything is larger than life, the muddiness of Spector's production style gives it an ethereal quality. There's definitely bass, but other than that, I have no idea what plays the central motif. It could be guitar, it could be piano, I have no idea. It's completely indistinguishable. The percussion breaks through. Phil's insistence on prominent percussion, whether snaps, hand claps, or horsehoof woodblock, it gives his work necessary dimension. Brian took this and ran with it on Pet Sounds. Sure, the Beatles were singing Love Me Do and I Wanna Hold Your Hand, but as we'll see on cuts like So Young, the girl groups were little queens of melodrama. I have a boyfriend, I love my boyfriend, but our parents say we're too young to get married. No one understands, I wish I were older. We're not quite to the levels of the Shangri-Las, don't run away with that boy or your mom will get so sad she'll die, but we're close. It's funny. When I was younger, I thought, oh, Ronnie sounded so much older than 17, 18. This could be an adult woman singing. Now that I'm 25, I can't help but notice how youthful Ronnie's voice was here. It wasn't outwardly tender, especially on those high notes. She's got a lot more control than a younger singer typically would. Her wily vibrato required it, as did that run on So Young through the bridge. I hear youth in the squeak on We Wanna Get Married and her soft ad-libs. I'm struck by how much she sounded like the boy singers of the time, Frankie Lyman and Ricky of the Students, who originally recorded So Young. Is it just me, or did Ronnie flub the lyrics on the last verse? The original is... Again, the melodrama, I'm gonna lay down and die of a broken heart. Ronnie sings, this loving baby will last the last of me. I'm shocked. Uber perfectionist, 40 takes of everything. Phil let that through. Is that a harmonica on Best Part of Breaking Up? Someone should make a party game for music nerds, okay? Where you sit down, listen to a Phil Spector record, you have little pads of paper in front of you, and you list how many instruments you hear. The one with the longest and most correct list wins. Like So Young, the message of Best Part of Breaking Up is positively juvenile. I'm never too sad when we fight and break up, because I know it's not for real. Baby, I'll be lonely till you're back where you should be, 'cause baby, I belong to you and you belong to me. She's pouting until he comes back. This is so high school. Through the bridge, we have something unusual for a Ronettes record. What sounds like male falsetto vocals. They cover the doo-wop. What I love most about this song, besides the interplay of voices, is messing with the tempo. It's very subtle, but the drums headed into the bridge drag slightly. It perks our ears up for Ronnie's soft beckoning. Come on, baby, don't say maybe. Then the tempo snaps and launches forward for Best Part of Breaking Up is when you know, spilling into the coda. When I first heard I Wonder, I had to look up and see if it was a single meant to capitalize on Be My Baby, because man, they are similar. This is the drawback of the pre-album age album. You guessed stuff that went unreleased for a reason. Rounding out side 1 is the Ronettes version of Ray Charles' What I Say. This is an oddball. I don't know if it's a faux live track or a live recording. If it's live, I couldn't find who engineered this, and if it's fake, this is the most convincing fake live recording I've ever heard. It's as if we're transported to the Ronettes' big moment at the Peppermint Lounge. For us modern fans, it's a glimpse of what seeing the Ronettes in person would have been like. There's no Spectre strings, just a drummer, a bassist, guitars, and a horn section. While it doesn't assimilate sonically, it captures the Ronettes' youth while being a welcome break from oohs, yous, and babies. It's an artifact of its time as well. These girls aren't doing the Ray Charles moans. It wouldn't have been proper for a lady. Side 2 opens with the main event. The one you've all been waiting for, one of the greatest pop songs ever recorded. I started my fabulous Ronettes listening with Be My Baby back when I was putting the finishing touches on the Trout Mask script. It took so long because, I don't know, it's like a switch went off in my brain. My frontal lobe developed, and now whenever I hear Be My Baby, tears are just streaming down my face. How was Be My Baby the perfect vehicle to introduce the Ronettes to the world? Let me count the ways. The Spanish flair in the boom, ba-boom, castanets, the cha-cha-cha section, and Latin piano are all an ode to Spanish Harlem. The drums aren't so deep and booming. They cut through the rolling piano and big band. It's like the cops coming to kick the door down on your teenage party, but then they remember how wonderful it was to be young and join in. In the foreword of Ronnie's memoir, Billy Joel described how parties would just light up when Be My Baby came on, and I believe it. The girls gave the performance of their lives. It's like they knew this was the song. Ronnie might as well be part of the horn section. Soul just pours from the words she sings. Fleeting, so won't you say you love me? I'll make you so proud of me. There's some cutesiness on we'll make them turn their heads every place we go, and you know I will adore you. But on every other line, it's so achingly sincere. There's a coolness about be my little baby, say you'll be my darling, followed by the exclamation of be my baby now, and her signature, not to mention those ad-libs at the end. Darlene Love said how Phil would let the lead singer do whatever she wanted for the last 30 seconds or so of the song. It was a strategy to deliver the final musical punch. She sang her heart out. Estelle and Nedra's ever-present vocals are especially magical. Their blend was amazing. Family groups always have a leg up in that respect because the sound of your voice is genetic. Brothers and sisters and cousins tend to sound the same. Hello, Beach Boys. Hello, Carpenters. Be My Baby is all the high stakes of young love and the utter devotion of true love. Be My Baby is a tough act to follow. It blows future yous and babies out of the water. It's unfortunate for you, baby. It's one of the clearest sounding songs, arranged perfectly with a good saxophone solo, and prominently features Nedra and Estelle. And it's a rare example of freely expressed sexuality. Only you could have made me wait this long wanting your kiss, but now that you're really mine, I'll make up for the time you made us miss. Our capacity for babies and love and good old Ronnie, isn't spent just yet. Baby I Love You is so underrated. It's simple on the surface, a song about the pure elation of being with someone you love. It bursts with Ronnie's personality and sheer unbridled charisma. She can't help but cry, I love everything about you. Once again, we've gone balls to the wall with instrumentation, this time with woodblocks, sleigh bells, and low brass. It feels like fireworks. Every time you think, this is it. This must be the most brilliant part of the composition. We can't top this. Something does. Like the kiss of strings through the second chorus, or the treatment on Estelle and Nedra's voices. How can a room so full sound so empty? It's magical. It's grandeur. It might be sacrilege, but I don't know which version I prefer. The Ramones version is a camp masterpiece. How Does It Feel is another oddball. It's the most undone track for sure. Oddly chaotic, but that's fine for a song about a messy, bratty breakup. It can't seem to get a hold of itself. Everyone is rushing. When I Saw You falls flat. The relatively restrained production in the beginning allows Ronnie's vibrato to shine, but between the two ballads, So Young is the showstopper. Finally, we have a Ronettes Chapel of Love. Greenwich and Barry originally wrote this song for Darlene Love to sing. Phil didn't like her performance and shelved her version. He did this a lot. We're still getting unreleased Ronettes material today. The song was handed off to the Dixie Cups, who made it a #1 hit. The Ronettes take is a little cooler than the Dixie Cups, less demure. If the Dixie Cups ride off in like a white Cadillac, then the Ronettes ride off into the sunset on the back of some guy's motorcycle. But like So Young, the Ronettes Chapel of Love is tainted in my mind, given the context of everything that happened after this record. Knowing how Phil obsessed over Ronnie, halted her career by literally imprisoning her in his home, and how things went with Phil in the end, it makes these songs spooky. So why are the Ronettes so important? Why are they revered by everyone from punks to pocket symphony composers? Sheer talent, for one. Ronnie was once in a lifetime. The wall of sound, too. Cluttered as Phil's productions may be, it heightens every wholehearted emotion the Ronettes sing of. That combination triggered a girl group craze. Girl groups made space in pop music for black women, as rock and roll did for black men. Growing up, the Ronettes were outsiders for being mixed race. Within the industry, though, because the girls couldn't be boxed into any one category, their music couldn't either. Ronnie said in her book that the Ronettes transcended race. They weren't black music, they weren't white music, they definitely weren't Spanish music. They were for everybody. Girl groups in general did so much for women in music. Before the summer of 1963, there was this idea of, girl groups aren't a good investment. They won't last because girls will want to get married. This was 6 years before Joan Baez took the stage at Woodstock while pregnant. Being a wife and mother and being a working musician were mutually exclusive back then. Sure, the writing might be backwards today. Nothing here is exactly transgressive. I think it's common knowledge now that teenage girls care about more than just boys. But on Fabulous Ronettes, these girls bust any preconceived notions of how girls should conduct themselves. They have the sass of seasoned soul women, the attitude of girls their age, and the freedom of rock and rollers, shaking their hips and flirting with boys in the audience. That ownership of sexuality was revolutionary. Before them, girl groups were seen as prim and proper. The Ronettes' bad girl image redefined rock and roll femininity. You could be whatever you wanted to be. Tough, sassy, sweet, in love, pitching a fit, crying on the floor. You could feel it all in 36 minutes. It's not perfect. It's not even really an album package. It didn't get to be a big success as a whole. Though the singles were pre-British invasion, the album had to compete with the Beatles, the Stones, and the Kinks. In spite of its circumstances, presenting the Fabulous Ronettes is 36 minutes of sheer joy. The world needs more of that right now. My personal favorites off this one are Do I Love You, So Young, Best Part of Breaking Up, Be My Baby, and Baby I Love You. Remember, if you want to keep up with all of my favorites from all of the Vinyl Mondays, I have a Spotify playlist linked in my description. I update it every week. And that's it! That is presenting the Fabulous Ronettes. What do you think of this album? What do you think of the Ronettes? Leave a comment letting me know. I love hearing what you guys have to say about albums that I love. And remember, despite what some guy on the internet tells you, your opinion matters. If you like what I do here, you should like this video and subscribe to my channel. I post new episodes of Vinyl Monday, Mondays at 11, and a new Dolls Pod every other Friday at noon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye! Time to go wash all of this hairspray out of my hair!